I want to unveil my 5-year plan today for progressives to take over the country. Buddy, in order to do that, first we have to have an honest conversation about what went wrong. And in 2020, I think you know this, it's not news to you, we lost. Progressives lost. So we were very hopeful that a progressive would win the presidency, and Bernie Sanders, for a while, was leading. But we have obviously lost that race as well as many others. So why did we lose? Well, there's three main reasons, and I'll walk you through this. But one, we got outvoted by older voters. That's just a fact, and they won the day. Two is the mainstream media, and three is no teamwork. So let me take you through these one by one. Roughly speaking, above the age of 45, they voted for Biden, and they voted for Biden at about 70% rate. And under the age of 45, we got the voters. I'm going to tell you a lot more about that in a second, because that's our hope, and that's how we're going to win in the future. But for now, there are more older voters. And I talk about personal responsibility all the time. The establishment Democrats, they never take personal responsibility. When Hillary Clinton lost, they said, oh, it was Russia, it was James Comey, it was the weather, it was Bernie supporters, it was this, it was that. No. It was you. It was you. So when it comes to us, and when we lose, it's fair to say it was also us. We couldn't win over the voters that were above 45 years old. And we also could not vote at the same rate that they do. So we've got to improve upon that. And demographically speaking, that was the biggest divide and the biggest difference maker. But then you go to point number two. Why? Why did the above 45-year-olds vote so overwhelmingly for the establishment candidate? And why did the people under 45 vote so overwhelmingly for the progressive candidate? Well, there's a reason for that. It's because the media is the culture. It sets the culture. And online media, which is where under 45-year-olds grew up, is honestly more centered around facts. So you can actually look things up. You can Google it. You can look at policy. Whereas over 45-year-olds mainly get their information from cable news. And it's largely pulp. And so they say things like, oh, the moderate Democrat is always more electable. Well, wait, do you have polling that shows that? No, it doesn't matter. I'm spoon-feeding this to above 45-year-olds who are never going to check it anyway. Do they ever talk about the issues? Do they talk about the bankruptcy bill that Joe Biden helped to pass and how that saddled so many young Americans with student debt? No, they never, ever talk about that. So do people above the age of 45, on average, do they know Joe Biden's record? Do they know how many times he lied about civil rights? And I could go on and on and on. No, because TV literally never covered it. And New York Times, Washington Post, et cetera, they're not much better. They'll do one story. It'll be on page A17, and then they'll let it go. And so, look, I don't want to rehash the primary. What's done is done. And so here I am acknowledging they won. It is what it is. And I hope to God that they defeat Trump. But media makes a giant difference. Look, guys, I can even show you in the case of Bloomberg. Bloomberg spent $500 million on advertising. And for a while it worked. It really elevated his poll numbers, and in a short period of time. But then one debate wiped all that out. Elizabeth Warren handed him his ass in the debates, and $500 million was gone, evaporated, because media is everything. So that is why it's so important to win the media wars. If we don't win it by the time we have the next election, well, they're going to keep telling everybody that the moderates are the best, they're the most electable, that there's really no difference in policies between progressives and moderate Democrats or conservative Democrats, and that's just not true. And finally, the third part was nobody ever united on the progressive side. On the establishment side, man, once they got their marching orders from donors and Democratic leadership, it was over. Buttigieg gone. Klobuchar gone. Immediately endorsed Biden, Bloomberg endorsed Biden, Beto O'Rourke endorsed Biden. They unified after South Carolina in a second flat. Now, this is not to harp on the big one that everybody's familiar with. Elizabeth Warren obviously should have endorsed Bernie Sanders and did not. And it was deeply disappointing. She didn't come through in 2016. She didn't come through in 2020. But that's not what I'm referring to. Is that's part of the phenomenon? Yes. But the bigger part of the phenomenon is All the mainstream media says the same thing. All of the establishment Democrats rally around the same candidate and all say the same thing. I'm not asking for progressives to do likewise. We're not robots, and we think things through, and yes, we're independent. But for God's sake, can we also show some degree of unity when we have progressive candidates? So did every progressive media outlet cover candidates like Kara Eastman? Or do they cover them now? Kara Eastman nearly defeated a Republican in Nebraska. She's running a race right now. Has every outlet covered her? No. But why not? The mainstream always unites, and they always call progressives illegitimate. Shouldn't we do the opposite and do it in your own way? Do it in any way you like. But talk about Kara Eastman, talk about Jamal Bowman. He's in such an important race against Elliot Engel. He's an incredible, dynamic, progressive candidate. There's Alex Morse running against Richard Neal. All of these things. Mike Siegel in Texas. Shahid Buttar running against Nancy Pelosi. If you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk. So that includes progressive media, but it also includes, and this is a little controversial, but it has to be said, progressive elected officials. When others on the mainstream side lend their brand to Joe Biden, it makes a giant difference. Whether it's Buttigieg, Klobuchar, et cetera, or most importantly in South Carolina, Jim Clyburn. But do progressives do likewise? From time to time, but it's begrudging, and you really pressure them into it. For God's sake, if the grassroots elected you, you have a duty and obligation and responsibility to make sure that you unite and return the favor when others are running. Don't sit there and go calculate, well, Jamal Bowman's running against Elliot Engel, and Elliot Engel's an incumbent Democrat, and he's my colleague, and it would be rude to oppose him. No, you don't agree with him as much as you agree with Jamal Bowman. That's what primaries are for. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing rude about that. After you have crossed the bridge, you must fortify the bridge so that others can cross it. Otherwise, we can't win. And right now, that is the state of progressives in this country. That's the reality. Now, I mentioned branding there. I have to stay on that because, guys, politics is all about branding. And it's an uncomfortable fact, but still a fact. So when you go into a voting booth, all you see is a name. And so what is the brand that is attached to that name? Well, there are three components to branding, and they are, number one, most important, name recognition. Do they even know you or don't they know you? Number two is media, and number three is endorsements. So I'll go over this quickly, then I'll turn to how we're going to actually use this information and knowledge to fight back and to win. Okay, so the reason why people who run a second time are more likely to win is because they have then been running for several years and built up their name recognition. So, for example, I told you guys ahead of time, Marie Newman had a better chance of winning than many other progressives running. Not just because the Democratic incumbent in her case was so loathsome and such a Republican and pretending to be a Democrat, that was Dan Lipinski, but because it was Marie Newman's second time running. I'll tell you ahead of time right now, Jessica Cisneros will win her election in Texas if she runs again. She barely lost to Cuellar this time. That seat is hers. All she has to do is run again because she's got to build up that name recognition. But number two, the media, as I told you earlier, is massive. When they say that someone is the legitimate candidate, which is what they say about centrist corporate Democrats every time, and when they say that progressive candidate is the illegitimate candidate, it makes a giant difference in your branding. People don't know the minutia of this and the details that I'm explaining to you now. All they see is a report from the New York Times, or they hear something on NPR, and the framing that most of the media, the mainstream media, gives is, if you're a corporate Democrat and the Democratic leadership is on your side, legitimate, credible, that's the one you should vote for. Progressive, radical, outsider, etc. And that is literally billions of dollars in positive branding that helps corporate Democrats when they walk in that voting booth. They already heard so many times about how credible and wonderful the centrist candidate was. And if they heard anything about a progressive, Very rarely is it positive, and oftentimes it'll be negative about how they're radical and outsiders. And then finally, in the branding, endorsements. This is what I was referring to. So when the mainstream media does endorsements, it helps tremendously for their guys. For our side, we have a couple of stars: Bernie Sanders, AOC, the rest of the Justice Democrats, etc. Those guys have an extra responsibility. Those people need to step up and make sure they are fighting for progressives, because we don't have a lot of stars to give us endorsements and help our branding when we get in that voting booth. So whichever of those folks that we help now and we've helped in the past must help fellow progressives after they win. Otherwise, we cannot win. And right now, we don't have that great cooperation. We have some of it, but not enough. So those are your factors as to honestly why we lost this time around. Now, let's talk about how we can change it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.